Hi, my name is Adiri Zansky-Nir. Welcome to the Healthcare Stage, the go-to podcast for innovators dedicated to enhancing health and wellness globally. In each episode, we dive into insightful conversations with those at the forefront of healthcare innovation. This episode is dedicated to an early-stage Israeli pharmaceutical company named Golden Heart Flower. The company developed a drug for a disease called APBD, which stands for Adult Polyglucosan Body Disease, a rare inherited metabolic disorder characterized by abnormal accumulation of polyglucosan bodies in cells of the nervous system and other tissues. The disease belongs to a family of glycogen storage disease and affects roughly 350 patients worldwide. The drug currently under development is a small molecule called GHF201, and it was found to have a mechanism of action enhancing lysosomal activity. Hence, the potential of this molecule may go far beyond APBD and should be further assessed in an array of lysosomal storage diseases. The Israeli Ministry of Health allowed the company to administer the drug to 3 APBD patients via a special program named Urgent Compassionate Use. As a result, the company already has accumulated 5 years clinical data from 3 patients which used the drug. During this compassionate use, the drug was shown to be both safe and efficacious. The company is currently looking to raise $10 million in order to complete CMC and toxicology and initiate the first clinical study in the US. If you're a pharma investor interested in exploring new opportunities in the rare disease space, this podcast is for you. It is my absolute pleasure to host here today Yaniv Glazer, the CEO of Golden Heart Flower. Yaniv has been working in the pharmaceutical industry for the past 30 years, where he gained extensive experience on the business aspects of the industry in several therapeutic areas, but mostly in the neurology space. He worked at global corporates in Europe, in the US, and in Israel. After all these years, he was tickled to do something from scratch, and this is how his story with Golden Heart Flowers begins 2 years ago. Hi, Yaniv.
Hi, Adi. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here.
It's my pleasure. Tell us something about yourself.
Well, as you said, throughout my career, which is 30 years by now in the healthcare industry, I've really strived to find the value I bring to the end user, namely patients and their carers. Whether it was alleviating severe pain in oncology patients or supporting HIV patients in the 90s by introducing new drugs that really transformed the trajectory of fatal illness into a manageable chronic condition as we have today with AIDS. I can also think about great technologies that I was part of in its development to assist multiple sclerosis patients with administering injectable products and by then improving their quality of life. This is the first time, however, that I'm doing it as a startup company, which, as you said, which is far from what I did till now, being a part of a large pharmaceutical organization. It is absolutely challenging, but at the same time, exciting journey to look for innovative treatments for people living with diseases such as the one that I will discuss in a moment that have limited or no available solutions at all.
So Golden Heart Flower was established in 2020 by an entrepreneur and a businessman named Shlomi Schneider and his sister, Adi More, after their mother was diagnosed with an ultra-rare disease called ADPD, which stands for Adult Polyglucosan Body Disease. And before we dive into the bites and pieces of this disease and the compounds you are developing, say a word about the name of this company, because there is a very nice story behind the name of this company.
Absolutely. So Golden Heart Flower is actually a Jewish fairy tale that talks about a child whose mother becomes sick, and none of the treatments that were given to her actually worked. Finally, the child, as you can imagine, desperately seeks advice, was told about a very rare flower in which if he finds it and brings it to his mother and she will smell it, she will recover. Now, the whole fairy tale describes the journey and the adventures that the child undergoes. And like all fairy tales, as you can imagine, He eventually finds the flower, brings it to his mother, she smells it, and recovers. Really, the mission of GHF as a company is to turn this fairy tale into reality.
Nice. Let's talk about the disease. Who gets it? When do we typically see onset of first symptoms? What are the clinical characteristics of this disease?
Yeah, so APBD, it's an adult polyglucosan body disease. It's an ultra-rare genetic disorder that categorized under the group of or class of diseases called glycogen storage disorders, or GSD. And this specifically, APBD, is part of the type 4 GSD. It is a progressive and ultimately fatal condition characterized by a range of symptoms, including peripheral neuropathy, dysautonomia, urinary incontinence, and occasionally dementia. The onset of APBD is at a late stage of adult life, mostly at around the age of 40, when patients become symptomatic. Now, APBD predominantly affects individuals of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, mostly residing in the US and in Israel.
I think that one of the problems with ultra-rare diseases is that there is plenty of misdiagnosis because the medical community is less familiar with the disease. Is this also the case with APBD patients?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let's talk about the numbers. So there are about 350 APBD patients diagnosed. As I said, mostly in the US and in Israel, and although we know about several cases in Europe and in South America. However, recent research has estimated this number to be much higher, in the range of, let's say, several thousands. Now, as you said, this is probably because many of these patients are either underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed as other more prevalent neurodegenerative diseases such as ALS, multiple sclerosis, hereditary spastic paraplegia, Charcot-Marie-Tooth, and others. The challenge is that it really may take nearly 7 years on average until such patient is being diagnosed. Now, what happened during this time? Patients often experience a worsening of symptoms while potentially receiving treatments that are ineffective and may even cause unnecessary side effects or tolerability issues. I should also say that there are genetic testing that can simply identify this mutation that is responsible for APBD, and it's available everywhere. And it's so important to focus on how to increase awareness and education. And this is, by the way, a mission that anybody that deals with an ultra-rare disease should focus at the beginning. That's the main challenge. And let me just tell you this. Only in Israel alone, in the last couple of years, there have been about 10 newly diagnosed APBD patients in Israel, while in the whole 30 years before, only 30 patients were diagnosed. Now, this is most probably due to an effort done by the MIFNE. MIFNE is the APBD Patient Association in Israel, together with us, with GHF, to increase awareness. And there is a similar effort being done also by the APBD Research Foundation, which is the APBD Patient Association in the US, that works closely together with the APBD healthcare community in the US to do the same thing and increase awareness.
Let's talk a little bit about the biological mechanism causing the disease.
Okay, so as I said before, APBD belongs to a class or a group of diseases called glycogen storage diseases. These are inherited metabolic disorders of glycogen metabolism, which is caused by a deficiency of enzymes or transporters that are involved in the synthesis or the degradation of glycogen. Specifically, about APBD, it is caused by a deficiency in the glycogen branching enzyme, or GBE in short. leading to the formation of poorly branched glycogen called polyglucosan, which precipitates, aggregates, and accumulates in body as polyglucosan bodies. Now, such polyglucosan bodies accumulate mainly in the central and peripheral nervous system, but can also be accumulated and can be found in other tissues such as muscle, liver, heart, or even skin. Now, as a result, axons are being clogged, and that leads to dysfunction in the affected tissue and ultimately to a cell death in neurons. Now, maybe it's important also to distinguish APBD from Anderson's disease, which is another form of GSD type 4. But this one is characterized by the absence of the enzyme that I just mentioned, the glycogen branching enzyme, which may lead to a liver failure and death in childhood. Therefore, since glycogen branching enzyme is not completely absent in APBD, but rather deficient, I would say typically around 20% of the levels found in a healthy individual.
The normal levels, yeah.
Exactly. That specific disease, APBD, doesn't appear in early stage, but actually manifests in adulthood.
So your pipeline includes 4 R&D assets. All are small molecules. Tell us how these assets were discovered and what was the preclinical research that led the team to assume these molecules can help APBD patients.
Great. So let's go back and talk about the founders. So after the mother was diagnosed with APBD, the family embarked on a search for a treatment. Only then they discovered the unfortunate news that there was no treatment available. Fortunately or luckily, they were introduced to 2 dedicated researchers. One is Dr. Or from the neurology department at Hadassah and Karem in Jerusalem, and Professor Miguel Weil from the Tel Aviv University, who had been studying APBD for years in pursuit of potential treatment. Together, they developed an advanced microscopic tool to measure polyglucosan levels in an ex vivo skin fibroblast taken from APBD patients. Now, through a really extensive screening process via an in silico approach of over 10,000 different molecules, they identified several dozen hits capable of reducing these polyglucosan levels. Now, further narrowing down their selection by eliminating any molecules that may have toxic potential, they ended up with these 4 molecules with distinct structures, which are now forming our GHF company of our portfolio.
Okay.
After licensing them from Hadassah and the Tel Aviv University. I would also like to say that we have also licensed another molecule called guaiacol from Columbia University in New York, based on previous research suggesting a potential effect in APBD as well. Now, further investigations were conducted on these molecules in various tissues and in APBD mouse model developed by Professor Orphan, who is from the Columbia University. And it's also important, definitely important to mention Professor Alexander Lossus, who is a clinician. He is a neuro-oncologist from Hadassah and Karem, who is a world thought leader in his area, specifically in APBD, who played, I would say, a pivotal role in this research, contributing his extensive clinical experience and knowledge of the APBD disease.
So, and all these molecules are protected via IP, right?
Yes. So the company GHF has a really robust intellectual property portfolio that covers key geographic regions. We have already even few granted patents, including some for pharmaceutical compositions for various medical uses. And I can say that by looking at what we have today, this really secures the current as well as the future utilization of our pipeline.
We'll get there in a minute. So out of the 4 molecules, you selected one called GHF201 for further development. What do you know about the mechanism of action of GHF201?
Well, this was very interesting. Initially, when we identified these molecules as effective in APBD models, we really didn't know. We lacked a clear understanding of how do they actually work. However, after I would say several years of dedicated research, the team successfully characterized the mechanism of action of our leading molecule, GHF201, which as you mentioned before, it's a small molecule. And essentially, GHF201 enhances the lysosomal activity by increasing what's called autophagic flux. Now, the whole area of lysosomal autophagy has really become a buzzword, a very interesting topic, which is being studied quite extensively in recent years with various companies focusing on ways to enhance autophagic flux to treat medical conditions.
Yeah, perhaps we'll pause here and I'll explain, say a few words to our audience. So lysosomes play a key role in autophagy, a process where cells break down and recycle their own components, such as damaged organelles or misfolded proteins. And this is crucial for cellular health and hemostasis. And defects in lysosomal function can lead to a range of diseases, most notably lysosomal storage disorders, where the accumulation of undigested substances causes cellular and tissue damage.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. I mean, that's the role. And this is what we are actually realized or discovered, that GHF is actually helping to facilitate. And by doing that, it actually keeps or improve, I'd say, the level of activity of the cell and make it healthier. And the way we realize it, really the mechanism of action of GHF201, is actually that it binds to a transmembrane protein known as LAMP1, which normally LAMP1 reduces autophagic flux in the lysosome. However, by binding to LAMP1, GHF201 actually inhibits its activity. So essentially, it inhibits the inhibitor, leading to an increase in the autophagic flux and therefore the lysosomal activity. Now, this observation, by the way, is further supported by what we've seen and measured, a reduction in the lysosomal pH, so make it more acidic, which is another indication of to show that the lysosomal is really enhancing its activity. So while GHF201 doesn't specifically target the root cause of APBD, it really offers, I would say, a more generic approach or a platform, if you wish, that could potentially be beneficial in other diseases caused by lysosomal dysfunction.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that some lysosomal diseases are rare, but some affect large amount of patients. And this molecule is not curative, but it might slow down such a disease and act as a disease-modifying agent. And in that aspect, the potential is very large.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we are talking about like a blue ocean of potential indications that GHF201 can actually take an active role. Now, it's not necessarily direct to the root cause of the specific genetic disease. Let's say absence of an enzyme or something like that, because it is. I mean, there has been some recent studies that suggesting that the clinical manifestations of lysosomal storage aren't solely due to the direct effect of, let's say, for example, GAGs. GAGs is glycosaminoglycan storage, but also stem from a cascade of secondary events triggered by storage. Now, you can think about events such as secondary storage of unrelated substrate, dysregulation of signaling pathways, impaired autophagy, oxidative stress, and I can think of many others. Now, these factors play significant roles in the pathophysiology of lysosomal storage diseases, and therefore may represent a potential new therapeutic targets, much like GHF201, which enhances lysosomal activity by increasing the autophagic flux.
Yeah, understood. So let's talk a little bit about the preclinical data you generated with GHF201.
So that was really remarkable to witness the impact of our lead molecule GHF201 on mice. When we have the APBD mice model. So there is a video that we can see that the impact that it made on the mice that were an APBD mice model, where we gave them the GHF201, which was at that time was given parenterally, versus placebo, you could have seen the improvement that these mice were able to show on their motility, and as well as in some other parameters like grip strength test, survival even or with the efficacy that this study was able to perform, there were also no safety issues whatsoever, no tolerability that were observed throughout the whole study. Now, obviously, while we were encouraged by these potential results, knowing that these are still preliminary and limited data, you can imagine how excited and eager the founders were to explore the fastest route to make it available to their mother and potentially to other patients. Now, we all know, however, that the usual route to develop a drug is long, and this is just the beginning of the development process. However, and just to make it short, following few interactions with the Ministry of Health in Israel and with the IRB committee in Hadassah, they actually approved the use of GHF201 in up to 3 APBD patients under a special program that's called Urgent Compassionate Use. Now, such program is typically reserved really as a last resort for life-threatening medical conditions such as oncology or severe genetic disorders, where patients have either exhausted all available treatments or no treatment options are available. This was, I would say, a great achievement. I would say a real game changer to our company moving forward.
We'll get to this in a minute, but before we get there, say a few words about the formulation that was administered to these 3 patients that participated in this unique program.
Yes, so as I mentioned before, I mean, all the studies that were performed in mice were given parenterally. Now, once we got this program approved, we wanted to see or to look for ways in order to make it more accessible for patients. And with that, we actually collaborated with Professor Nissim Garti, who is from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and also a founder of a company called LDS, Lyotropic Delivery Systems. With his knowledge and his support, using his proprietary formulation, we developed an orally administered solution of GHF201, which can be taken twice daily. Now, you can imagine that this marked a significant improvement in the patient's quality of life when they started taking this treatment.
So they started taking this treatment on June 2021. And tell us what happened following treatment initiation.
So as you said, the program itself initiated in June 2021 at the Hadassah Hospital, led by Professor Lossos, which I mentioned before, and his study coordinator, Anat Mordechai, to treat GHF201. And in June 2021, they have started with the first APBD patient. And since then, 2 additional patients were enrolled, one in the beginning of 2022, it was February, and the third one, late 2022, I think it was around November. We have been collecting medical, clinical, and biomarker data on these 3 patients, accumulating by now more than 5 patients' years of data. Now, patients have reported improvements in their vitality, muscle strength, particularly in the lower limbs. One patient even reported a sensory improvement, enabling her to feel cold and warm sensations in her feet, which she couldn't feel prior to the treatment initiation. Now, these subjective observations are supported by objective parameters and biomarkers, such as a reduced of polyglucosan levels in fibroblasts. We used to do it in punch biopsy, skin punch biopsy, and also a decrease in neurofilament light chain, which is an indicator for reduction of axonal damage. Now, overall, the results, both the clinical and laboratory, are promising, and they are actually demonstrating encouraging outcomes in both objective and subjective measures. And also in here, it's also important to say that up until now, and I hope it will continue like that, we have not observed any safety or tolerability issue in these 3 patients throughout this long period.
So you guys received Orphan Drug Designation in 2023 from the FDA. Please explain our audience what that means.
Yeah, so as you said, the Orphan Drug Designation, or ODD, was granted to us by the FDA to treat glycogen storage diseases type 4, which includes obviously APBD. Now, ODD, in short, is awarded to drugs developed for rare diseases affecting less than 200,000 patients or people in the US. Now, this designation provides significant incentives for the company that develops this drug, including 7 years of market exclusivity upon approval, tax credits, fee waivers, and also access to specialized regulatory advice from the FDA. Now, together with that, we have begun engaging with the FDA to seek feedback on our development activities across various areas within, let's say, the CMC, the preclinical, and the clinical aspects. Currently, we are conducting the IND enabling studies, and in parallel, we are focusing on advancing the manufacturing of both our drug substance and drug product to meet our development milestones.
So the design of upcoming phase 1 and phase 2 studies are based on the interaction you currently have with the FDA?
Yes, well, we are definitely fully dedicated to meeting the requirements set forth by the regulatory authorities, while remaining committed to the APBD community. I mean, they are desperate looking for something to treat themselves. So their clock is ticking. So it's extremely important for us to bring this as soon as possible. Now, our ultimate goal is really to bring this product to market as swiftly as possible.
Right.
And we all understand that due to the nature of disease, given the limited number of patients and the high unmet need where no treatment is available, is that if all goes well, I would say that the time to market has the potential to be much faster than the usual course.
When do you anticipate NDA submission?
Look, all of what we have achieved so far, I would say it will be by 2027, 2028. But again, it really depends on how it will proceed from
For
now
sure.
with the studies.
Okay, let's talk about money. Up until now, you raised money from the Israel Innovation Authority and from family and friends. How much money do you need to raise moving forward to initiate the clinical development in the US?
So first of all, everything that I've just described and everything that we achieved so far was with really limited fundings, which came from private investors and the Israeli Innovation Authority.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to sustain our ongoing preclinical activities, prepare for the CMC readiness, advance regulatory work, and obviously continue the research into potential additional indications to, I would say, to enhance the company's value proposition, we are seeking to raise $10 million, where this funding will, I would say, propel us into the clinic phase of our development.
I must ask you, do you have competitors?
Well, while I would say, there are several companies working on treatments, developing treatments for glycogen storage diseases. We are aware about GSD1A, GSD2, GSD3. But as far as we are aware, there is currently no company specifically focused on development of treatments for APBD.
Although you are several years away from market entry, how do you foresee the pricing of this drug?
Okay, so, well, that's definitely a good question. Our initial estimate, which has been, I would say, confirmed by pricing and health economics expert,
Mm-hmm.
is that we should consider the pricing of treatments for other glycogen storage diseases. Now, what's the catch? The catch is that only Pompe is actually the only GSD disease that has an approved treatment. And if you look at the cost or the annual cost of Pompe in the US today, we're talking about a ballpark of something like $500,000 per patient per year to treat one Pompe patient. So I think this would be the starting point for us once we get to these discussions.
Makes sense. And what are the other indications you wish to assess moving forward?
So as I mentioned earlier, due to the mechanism of action of GHF201, we have the potential to target any indication associated with or caused by substrate accumulation or interference with proper cell or tissue function. Now, this includes other glycogen storage diseases, as I mentioned before, GSD1A, which is called von Kirke, or GSD type 3, Cori disease. I mean, this is something that we are already studying in our research. And obviously also Pompe disease, which is, by the way, considered as both GSD type 2 and also as lysosomal storage diseases. And by the way, for Pompe, we already have excellent preliminary outcomes in study done in mouse model of Pompe. And we are continuing also to research other diseases within the lysosomal storage diseases class. Now, additionally, we are also investigating indications that I would say fall outside the orphan disease space, which are much more prevalent. Now, I also would like to remind that while much of our focus has been on GHF201, it's important to note that we have also 3 other innovative molecules in our portfolio, along with guaiacol, which I've mentioned before, which have yet to explore the full potential. Now, these additional components, compounds, present exciting opportunities for further research and development across a range of indications. So we need to explore this as well in the future.
Exciting indeed. So, Yaniv, let me try and summarize your value proposition to date. So, Golden Heart Flower is a preclinical company. We've accumulated 5 years clinical data, exhibiting no adverse events and efficacy data. The disease does not have any treatment, and so once approved, you won't be competing with anybody. That means that time to market would be relatively short. And although you have several small molecules in your pipeline, in essence, you may have a platform with GHF201 only, which might be efficacious with other glycogen storage diseases and lysosomal storage diseases. Additionally, CMC currently under development could be utilized for additional research and safety toxicology as well, assuming you use alike dosages.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Let me ask you, what are your main risks? How do you foresee the main risks moving forward, and how do you intend to mitigate these risks?
Okay, so what I can think about are the following. So first of all, developing a new drug inherently involves risks,
right?
Such as safety concerns, potential lack of meaningful patient effect, manufacturing challenges. However, as an early stage pharmaceutical company, we have mitigated these risks significantly, I would say, with the data collected from the 3 patients, showing positive clinical outcomes and no safety signals. So this is one thing. Another thing I would think of is the patient population of APBD, which is small. So that may present a challenge to find these patients. However, our close relationships with patient associations, as I mentioned them before in the US and in Israel,
right,
coupled with the absence of available treatment, should facilitate, I would say, a swift patient recruitment once we get to the clinical stage, and subsequent market penetration once we get there. Now, maybe another subset of the impact of focusing on a disease with a small population, it might also be less attractive to investors. However, APBD, I would say, has the potential to serve as a proof of concept for other indications. With APBD, we have the potential to reach the market in relatively short time, and by that generate, I would say, the returns for investors, while at the same time to continue to explore other indications currently in research, which may significantly enhance the value proposition of GHF.
We are nearing the end of this encounter. Is there something else you would like to share?
Well, at GHF, we've achieved remarkable progress in really short time, despite the challenges and the limited fundings. Our success is really attributed to our exceptional team, which consists of collaborators, researchers, advisors, and partners. Now, as we continue to expand, our mission remains focused on bringing new treatments to market and helping more patients. Now, ultra-rare diseases like APBD really require visionary entrepreneurship like the Schneider family to take such opportunities forward while first think about the benefit and value that it will bring to the patients. And if I would say that if that will succeed, the return on the investment will follow.
Thank you so much for sharing this important data with me. I hope this podcast will help you guys in your important journey. For audience interested in learning more about the company, I recommend visiting their website. This podcast is available on my LinkedIn page and the YouTube channel called The Healthcare Stage, and also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you're working at companies developing novel solutions aimed at improving the lives of others, or you are a researcher in hospital or academia conducting groundbreaking research with potential clinical application, do get in touch with me at adi@thehealthcarestage.com. Yaniv, I hope you are able to raise the capital you need and pursue the clinical study in the US. Thank you so much for coming over. It was an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Adi. With your help, I'm sure we'll do it. Thank you very much.